Hermeus is a high-speed aircraft manufacturer, including hypersonic aircraft. And you're joining us, Zach, just a few days after your Quarterhorse model successfully completed its first supersonic flight. This is the first time a privately developed unmanned supersonic jet has had that kind of success. What can you do with it? What would it enable the U.S. military to do that we don't currently have the capacity for?
Well, first off, thank you so much for having me. There's a lot of missions that a vehicle like this can unlock. We've certainly heard the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and other leaders testify on the use of F-15s and MQ-9s in the Epic Fury operation. So having an unmanned aircraft that can carry significant payloads, long distances at high speeds, starts to get you into the munitions conversation that you were just having a moment ago. As an example, an aircraft like ours, if it's hitting speeds up to Mach 3, which is what this aircraft will ultimately do, at those speeds, at high altitude, you can effectively double the range of any munition that's on the aircraft's wings. And so what you start to get is the ability to stand off your systems. And this is really important because the further your standoff, the less likely you are to attrit that system and the more survivable you are. We certainly saw with Epic Fury, again, some of the system trades that we had to make in losing aircraft that were within that sort of exchange window. So a vehicle like this gives us that long arm and that low cost.
Our audience should know that you're a warrior, you're a Marine, you served in Iraq and Afghanistan. You also used to work at Anduril, which I find really interesting. And I'm wondering how you view the landscape here. We had an executive from Lockheed talk to us about expanding the capacity of missile manufacturing a couple of days ago. But a lot of folks think that you are the future. Are the old line defense contractors like Lockheed and Raytheon your competitors, or are you in your own space?
It's both and. I mean, there's enough room for everybody here, and there's a lot of expertise in the primes that Hermeus doesn't have. We have a great relationship, as an example, with Pratt & Whitney, given that Raytheon's an investor. We work closely with Northrop Grumman and others.
And you're using a GE engine in this aircraft,
We're using a
right?
Pratt & Whitney engine.
Got it. Okay.
Pratt & Whitney engine. So there's a lot of different expertise in this ecosystem, and it's only going to work and scale if we all kind of work together. And the real key is creating enough operating space, economically in particular, to allow companies like Anduril, Hermeus, Castilian to enter that space and to provide new solutions. And so I think, again, as your previous guest spoke, you're seeing this administration and Congress give you some breathing room here to see new entrants. And certainly, Anduril, I was very proud of my time there, have great relationships there, was one of the sort of flag bearers of this new approach to defense tech.
Well, and so on this idea of trying to expand the competition, basically, and widen the pool, is there more you would like to see the Pentagon do to facilitate that? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's not a very original thought. My old boss at Anduril, Chris Brose, talks about this a lot, which is it comes down to contracts. We also just talked about the example of Lockheed spending $6 billion because they now have certainty about $60 billion. The math is simple. The challenge has always been that the defense ecosystem is a monopsony. It is not a sort of a traditional market where supply and demand kind of come together in a natural way. And so, I think one of the things this administration has done very well is with DepSec Feinberg and his team understanding what long lead commitment looks like and giving that certainty. If Hermeus gets a large contract, our ability to create private capital to continue to develop and build upfront and alongside the government is of no question. It ends up in this really unfortunate chicken egg problem that we're starting to see crack. So I think, I would continue to encourage the department to invest in new entrants. I would push them to say, look a little bit more closely at hardware participants. We've seen them do incredible work on the AI side. But I do think sometimes we get a little caught up in the hardware side and giving the incumbents sort of all the opportunity there.
Well, let's talk about your hardware for a moment. The Quarterhorse, is it remotely piloted? Is it piloted by AI? What's the payload? Can it dogfight?
Yeah, great questions. All the above, right? So to start, we take a very iterative approach. I think Kelly Johnson, Skunkworks, Elon is certainly kind of the king of iteration these days for good reason. So the first version was remotely piloted. However, the vehicle is designed, and we're getting into the basic autonomy of the aircraft. It should not be flown by a human being. We're beyond that. Now, for testing purposes and getting into flight quickly and understanding the aircraft, we started with the vehicle itself. Now we're starting to layer in the autonomy. I will say, from a mission autonomy standard, we don't build the mission autonomy. Companies like Anduril, Northrop, Shield, they all have mission autonomy packages. We are not interested in that part of the market. We are agnostic to that, and we will adopt sort of whatever the customer wants, but we have the basic autonomy on the aircraft. From a payload perspective, our new DIU contract gets us into now releasing weapons, integrating other payloads. I can't really speak in detail about it, you can probably imagine, to take this aircraft and start adding value to the warfighting community in a real way. So it started as a test asset, and now you're like, well, hold on a second. What if we put insert payload on board? How does this start scaling? So that DIU contract allows us to do it. The dogfighting question is interesting. I mean, a CCA gets to that, but dogfighting is really not the remit of this. You have long ranges and sensors, and so we just want to be a truck that can bring systems to the fight.
I see.
Well, so when we consider all of the different components that will go into this effort, are there supply chain challenges that you are agreeing with? I mean, we talk about the defense industrial base in this country that obviously is in need of a great deal. Where are you seeing it most acutely?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are components certainly that we struggle with that I don't want to necessarily flag on television, but I think one of the things we've done that's been useful is in our design processes, we have fitted our aircraft to integrate into like the F-16 chain as much as possible. It's F-16 landing gear, it's the F-16 engine with Pratt & Whitney's F-100. And so making a vehicle that fits into current supply chains, standard jet fuel, is adoptable and deployable by the current joint force. The other thing is standard steel. It's the 304L steel that Elon uses, laser welding, things like that, to make this as manufacturable as a Sherman tank. That is a key sort of part of way in which we design and prototype these systems.
I want to ask you to weigh in on the concept of autonomous beyond what you just said. There should be no man or woman in the cockpit of an airplane that's being shot at, I think is your point. I had the thrill and the honor to fly in an Air Force F-16 once, and the pilot who brought me over the test firing range in Nevada said, it'll never happen, because what a human being brings to combat is the hair standing up on the back of your neck. That instant reaction, fear as a motivator, could never be duplicated by a computer. This was before the big AI wave began that we're in now. Has that simply changed?
I mean, look, there's feelings around this, as you can imagine.
Well, yeah, what are your feelings?
My feelings is anytime we have certainty, we should be uncertain. The idea of a declaration like that should immediately give you pause. I don't think you have to look much further than the trenches of Ukraine to say the hairs on the back of your neck have now in Ukraine been replaced with autonomous systems that are eating the Russians alive. And so it's all true until it's not true. And so I would challenge the assumption. I don't think it's a binary in an immediate sense, but over time, there's no reason why we can't at least continue to put more distance between a human being and that end system. I can virtually put somebody in the cockpit for certain. And ultimately, I want to be able to attrit those systems without being able to attrit human beings. And so these are some of the decisions we're going to have to make as a nation.
This has been a fascinating conversation. How much time do you spend at the plant versus at the Pentagon talking to
I mean, I've somehow figured out how to create 48 hours in a day, so I'm everywhere all the time.
Can you let me in on that trick?
No doubt. But after the show, we'll get your insights on that.